The snowstorm began earlier than anyone expected. Thick white clouds rolled over the mountains and covered the sky until not a single patch of blue remained. Emily Carter, a young city photographer, had no idea how quickly mountain weather could change. She had read about it on travel blogs, but reading and experiencing were two different things. She came for peaceful winter photographs, not for a fight against nature. She drove her rented Jeep slowly on the narrow mountain road. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she looked for a safe spot to stop. Trees shook heavily in the strong wind and snowflakes slapped against the windshield. Her phone had already lost signal an hour ago. She had smiled at first, thinking it was part of the adventure. But now, she wished she could call someone. Emily had always lived in a busy city, chased by deadlines, noise, and stress. She loved photography, but her job forced her to capture only what clients wanted. This trip was supposed to be different. For the first time in years, she was taking pictures for herself. Photos that meant something. Photos that showed the calm she wanted in her life. But the mountains were not calm today. Her Jeep skidded on a hidden patch of ice. The tires slipped and the vehicle spun slightly. Emily gasped and pressed the brakes too fast. The Jeep stopped, but it landed half-tilted near the edge of the road. She sat there breathing quickly, her heart pounding in her ears. "This is not good," she whispered. The storm grew stronger. Snow gathered quickly on the road, covering everything under a thick white blanket. She tried to start the vehicle again, but the wheels only spun helplessly. Her chest tightened with worry. She wrapped her jacket tighter around herself and opened the door. A wave of freezing wind cut through her like a knife. She stepped outside, covering her face with her hands. Emily was not a weak woman. But city cold was nothing compared to mountain cold. Every breath felt like ice filling her lungs. She looked around for any sign of life. No cars, no houses. Only endless tall pine trees and white darkness. Then she saw it. Thin smoke rising above the trees on the right side of the road. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant someone lived nearby. Hope warmed her more than her jacket did. She closed the Jeep door and started, walking toward the smoke. Her boots sank into the deep snow with each step. The cold bit her fingers even through gloves, and her legs shook from exhaustion. The storm roared around her, pushing her back like a giant hand. Still, she forced herself forward. Minutes felt like hours. Her vision blurred. The snow became thicker. Her breaths grew shorter. She felt a strange lightness in her head, the kind people feel just before fainting. She shook her head, trying to stay conscious. Finally, through the storm, she saw an Ada wooden cabin with a small porch and a smoking chimney. Warm orange light glowed from the window. Emily tried to hurry, but her legs were too tired. When she reached the porch, she knocked weakly on the door before her body gave up. The world turned blurry. The door opened. But she only saw a tall shadow standing in the warm light. Then everything went dark. Emily woke to the crackling sound of burning wood. For a moment, she forgot where she was. She lay on a soft blanket beside a stone fireplace. Warmth soaked into her frozen skin, making her sigh with relief. Her fingers and toes tingled painfully as life returned to them. She slowly pushed herself up and looked around. The cabin was simple, but strong wooden walls, a handmade table, shelves with tools, and the fireplace glowing bright. Outside the window, storm raged even stronger. Then she saw him. A tall man stood near the kitchen counter, drying a metal cup with a cloth. He had broad shoulders, strong arms, and a thick beard that made him look older than he probably was. His clothes were plain flannel shirt, worn jacket, and heavy boots. His expression was serious, focused. It's almost unreadable. He noticed her sitting up and walked closer. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Good." Emily nodded. "Unsure what to say, you nearly froze out there," he continued. "Another 10 minutes, and the storm would have taken you." "Tea, thank you," she whispered. "I didn't know where else to go. You found the right place at the right time." He placed the cup on a small table near her. "Drink this. It'll warm you." She took the cup with shaking hands. Steam rose from it, carrying the comforting smell of herbal tea. "What's your name?" Emily asked softly. "Caleb Rowan," he he answered. I live here, alone. His tone wasn't rude, just honest. I'm Emily Carter, she said. My Jeep got stuck. I saw your smoke and you were lucky to see it in that storm. Emily looked down at her cup. I hope I'm not troubling you. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a wooden chair and sat near her, but not too close. Emily felt he was studying her carefully, not in a suspicious way, but in a cautious one, like someone who wasn't used to strangers. Finally, he spoke. I don't get visitors, he said plainly, and I'm not used to company. Emily nodded slowly. Still, he added, I couldn't leave you outside. Silence settled between them. Emily felt warmth returning to her body, but the man's presence made her slightly nervous, not because he seemed dangerous, but because he was so calm and unreadable. Then he said something unexpected. I should warn you, he began carefully. I can't always control myself around people. Emily froze for a second. Her heartbeat quickened. But the man didn't look threatening. His eyes held no anger or harshness. Instead, they held worry, deep, uncomfortable worry. What do you mean? She asked quietly. He looked away, as if embarrassed. I don't talk much. I don't know what to say most of the time. When I do speak, people say I'm too direct, too honest, too rough with words. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't mean harm, but I speak before thinking. Some folks take it the wrong way. Emily relaxed slightly. So you mean emotionally? She asked. Yes, he answered without hesitation. Emotionally. He sighed deeply. I left the city years ago because people misunderstood me. They thought I was rude when I was just honest. They thought I didn't care when I cared too much. So I live alone. It's easier. Emily listened carefully. This man was not dangerous, just simple in speech and deep in emotions. A lonely man who didn't trust himself to be around others without hurting them unintentionally. But you don't need to worry, he added. I won't trouble you. Once the storm ends, you can leave safely. Emily looked toward the window. Snow hit the glass with force. It doesn't look like the storm will end soon, she said. Caleb nodded. No, it won't stop tonight. Emily felt something inside her, settle a strange mix of comfort and uncertainty. She wasn't alone anymore, but she was with a man who barely knew her. She barely knew him. Yet she sensed he was a good man. Thank you for saving me, she said softly. Caleb stood up. You can rest here by the fire. I'll stay on the other side of the cabin. His respectfulness surprised her. Most strangers might feel awkward or impatient with such a sudden situation, but Caleb kept a careful distance, giving her space. Emily watched him add more logs to the fire. His movements were steady, practiced. This cabin was not just his home, it was his world. As the fire warmed the room, Emily's eyelids felt heavy. She tried to stay awake, but exhaustion pulled her down. The last thing she saw was Caleb sitting at his table, sharpening a wooden tool with calm, focused hands. The storm outside howled like a wild animal. But Emily felt safe for the first time since she left the city. For now, she knew one thing with certainty. She was exactly where she needed to be. The next morning brought no peace. The storm that raged through the night had rested only for a short time, and now it began again with even stronger force. Snow piled up outside Caleb's cabin until it swallowed half the porch. The wind howled against the wooden walls, testing their strength. Emily woke slowly, feeling the warmth of the fire against her face. She stretched her stiff arms carefully, then sat up. Caleb was already awake, moving around the cabin with quiet steps. He had a calm routine: add wood to the fire, check the small stove, open a wooden crate, and sort through tools and supplies. Every movement had a purpose. He turned when he noticed her watching. You slept long, he said. Feels like I haven't slept that deeply in months, she admitted. Caleb nodded once, as if he understood exactly what she meant. His expression didn't change much. There was a softer look in his eyes today. Emily wrapped the blanket around herself a little tighter. Is the storm still bad? Worse, he replied. No one's traveling the roads today, Emily sighed. She wasn't in a hurry to leave, but being stuck meant she had no control over her situation. That part bothered her. Caleb handed her a wooden bowl filled with warm porridge. "Eat, it'll help." Emily accepted it with a grateful smile. She tasted it carefully. It wasn't sweet or fancy, but it was warm, simple, and comforting. "You cook?" she asked with a bit of surprise. Caleb shrugged lightly. "Enough to survive." Emily looked around the cabin again. Everything was handmade: shelves, chairs, tables, even the thick wooden bed in the corner. She wondered how long he had lived alone like this. "I hope I'm not disturbing your life," she said quietly. "I didn't plan to be here." "You didn't choose the storm," Caleb replied. "And you're not disturbing anything." He said it so simply that she almost didn't catch the meaning. Caleb wasn't annoyed. He wasn't bothered. He had accepted her presence more calmly than she expected from someone who claimed he couldn't control himself around people. She finished her food and placed the bowl back on the table. "Thank you." Caleb nodded again, then returned to fixing a wooden handle near the window. For a few minutes, they both listened to the storm outside. Emily finally broke the silence. "Can I help with anything?" Caleb looked at her as if no one had asked him that in a long time. "Help? Yes," she said. "Just sitting feels strange. Let me do something." Caleb studied her face for a moment, deciding if she was serious. Then he pointed to a pile of firewood near the door. "If you want," he said slowly, "you can bring more wood from the indoor storage room. It's small work, but useful." Emily smiled. "I can do that." She stood and made her way to the storage room, surprised by how cozy it felt. A neatly arranged stack of split logs filled one side of the room. She grabbed an armful of firewood and carried it back to the fireplace. Caleb watched her for a second, but said nothing. After a while, she returned with another armful, and another. Caleb eventually stepped closer. "You don't have to do so much," he said. "But it helps," she replied, wiping her hands. "And I want to help." Caleb's face softened in a way Emily hadn't seen before. "Thank you," he said quietly. They fell into a quiet rhythm. Emily brought firewood, and Caleb fixed things around the cabin. The silence between them was natural, not uncomfortable. When Emily finished the chores, she sat near the fire and warmed her hands. "Caleb," she said gently, "yesterday you said you can't control yourself around people. What did you really mean?" Caleb froze. His hands stopped moving. He placed the tool he held on the table and sat on a chair across from her. He took a long breath. "I meant what I said. I don't always know how to act around people. I care too deeply too fast, or I become too protective. People think I'm strange." His eyes lowered. "They think something's wrong with me." Emily listened quietly. "I speak without thinking. I tell the blunt truth. I say things that make others uncomfortable." He rubbed his hands. "I don't want to hurt anyone. That's why I stay alone." Emily shook her head. "You didn't hurt me." He looked up, surprised. "Many would disagree with you." "Maybe they didn't understand you," she said softly. Caleb opened his mouth to speak, but instead he looked away again, as if unsure how to respond to kindness he wasn't used to. Emily studied him closely. There was nothing dangerous about him, only a man who had lived too long in silence and carried emotions he didn't know how to express. "What made you leave the city?" she asked gently. Caleb's jaw tightened slightly. "A mistake," he said, "and heartbreak." He didn't continue, so Emily didn't push. After a minute, she spoke again. "You built all of this alone?" "Yes, that must have taken years." 7, he replied quietly. "I came here with nothing but a backpack and tools." Emily stared at the cabin with new respect. Every corner held his effort, his patience, his loneliness. "And you live like this every day?" she asked. Caleb nodded. "It's peaceful. No noise, no lies, no pretending." Emily felt a heavy ache in her chest, not sadness, but understanding. She knew too well how tiring city life could be. People pretending to be okay. People rushing without purpose. People hiding behind fake smiles. "I like the quiet too," she whispered. Caleb looked at her sharply, but not in a harsh way, more like surprise. Before he could say anything, the storm shook the cabin again. Wind howled through the trees. Snow slammed against the windows. Emily flinched and hugged the blanket around her shoulders. "Is it always this strong?" she asked nervously. "Not always," Caleb said, standing up quickly. "But winter storms can be powerful." The wind pushed against the door, making it rattle. Emily's heart raced. She had never experienced nature this closely. Caleb noticed her fear. "Emily," he said calmly, "nothing will happen. This cabin has survived storms far worse than this." Emily nodded, but her body still shook lightly. Then a loud thud struck the roof, and she gasped. Caleb moved to her side instantly. "It's just heavy snow falling from the upper branches." His voice was steady, strong. "You're safe here," Emily breathed slowly, trying to calm down. Caleb stood close, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the warmth and security from his presence. For the first time, she understood what he feared about himself. He wasn't afraid of hurting her. He was afraid of how strong his protectiveness became when someone was near him. "Thank you," she whispered. Caleb stepped back carefully, giving her space. "It's natural," he said. "Storms scare people who aren't used to them." Emily forced a small smile. "I've only heard storms from inside tall buildings. They never felt this real." Caleb nodded. "Up here, everything is real." Hours passed slowly. Emily watched Caleb work quietly. He checked the roof from the attic hatch, secured the windows, and reinforced the porch door with a thick wooden beam. His movements were confident. He knew these mountains like the back of his hand. At noon, he made simple soup with vegetables and barley. Emily helped slice the vegetables, although she was slower and clumsier than him. Caleb didn't criticize her. At one point, she dropped a carrot piece, and he only said, "Happens." In his calm voice, they ate together at his wooden table. Emily admired how peaceful it felt to eat without the noise of the city. No cars, no horns, no crowds. Only the sound of the fire and the wind outside. Caleb looked up from his bowl. "Why did you come to the mountains alone?" Emily played with her spoon for a moment. "I needed a break. My job is stressful. My life is loud," he nodded. "People run from noise for a reason." Emily smiled weakly. "I didn't expect to get stuck in a storm, though. I'm glad you made it here," Caleb said quietly. Emily froze. Surprised by his honesty, Caleb looked away quickly, as if worried he'd said too much. This was his struggle. His heart spoke before his mind could soften the words. But Emily didn't feel uncomfortable. In fact, his honesty warmed her. "I'm glad too," she said softly. Caleb looked at her again, and for a short moment, the silence between them felt warm, not empty. The afternoon passed with slow, peaceful hours. Emily explored the cabin, admired Caleb's handmade items, and asked him questions about mountain life. Caleb answered in short but honest replies. Emily liked that he didn't pretend to be anything else. By evening, the storm still hadn't ended. Snow had piled so high that even the windows were half-dash covered. Emily sat near the fire again. Caleb sat across from her, sharpening a wooden stick into a tool handle. The firelight danced across his face, highlighting his quiet strength. "Caleb," she said softly, "are you always this careful around people?" He paused. "I try to be. I don't want to say something wrong or make someone uncomfortable." Emily shook her head. "You haven't made me uncomfortable." He searched her face, trying to see if she was being polite or truthful. Emily continued, "I understand you more than you think." Caleb placed the tool down slowly. "Maybe," he said, "but you don't know everything yet?" "Then tell me," she whispered. Caleb looked at the fire for a long moment. "I get attached to Isley," he said quietly. "Even when I try not to." Emily's heart softened. "That's not something to be ashamed of." "For people like me," he answered, "it becomes trouble." Emily didn't know what to say. She only knew one thing: Caleb wasn't dangerous. He was protective, loyal, emotional, and deeply human. The fire crackled gently. Outside, the storm continued to trap them together. Inside, something else was beginning quietly trust. After 2 long, heavy days of roaring wind and endless snow, the mountains finally became quiet again. The sky turned pale blue, the kind that appears only after a fierce winter battle. The sun rose gently over the snowy peaks, turning the world into a shining blanket of bright white. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned all night, keeping Emily and Caleb warm. Emily woke slowly, blinking at the sunlight that leaked through the window. For the first time since the storm began, she heard silence drew mountain silence. She sat up, stretched her stiff arms, and breathed in the calm air of the cabin. Caleb was standing near the door, wearing his heavy coat and boots, looking outside. He noticed her awake and nodded. "Morning, morning," she replied softly. "The storm passed," he said. "The world looks different today." Emily walked to the window and gasped. Everything was buried in deep snow. The trees stood tall like frozen statues, and the path leading to the cabin was almost invisible. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Caleb glanced at her. "The mountains always are after a storm." Emily wrapped the blanket around herself and stood beside him at the door. Caleb slowly opened it, and a small wall of snow pressed against the porch. He stepped outside carefully, testing the depth with his boot. Emily laughed softly. "It looks like your porch turned into a snow hill." Caleb nodded. "I'll clear it later. For now, it's good just to breathe fresh air." Emily watched him for a quiet moment. The peaceful morning light touched his face, softening his serious expression. He looked less like the isolated mountain man she first met, and more like someone who belonged exactly where he stood, steady, grounded, strong. "Will the roads open today?" she asked gently. "Maybe," he replied. "But they will send plows. Could take hours, or a whole day." Emily felt a strange heaviness in her chest. She wanted the roads to open, but she also didn't want this moment, this peace to end. Caleb stepped back inside and removed his coat. "I'll make breakfast." Emily followed him to the kitchen, helping him gather ingredients. Their movements felt natural now. She sliced vegetables while he heated water. They moved like two people who had shared a small world for years. Not just 2 days. While they ate, Emily watched him quietly. Caleb sensed it. "Something on your mind?" Emily swallowed a bite and nodded. "Yes." He waited. "I was thinking about leaving," she said softly. "About the roads, about going back." Caleb lowered his spoon slightly. His expression didn't show pain or sadness, but his eyes did very quietly. "You have a life in the city," he said calmly. "In your work," she whispered. "You should return to it," he added, his voice steady but low. Emily felt a small pull in her heart. A coldness deeper than the snow outside. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked slowly. Caleb looked at her sharply, surprised. "No," he said quickly. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then why'd you say it so easily?" Caleb looked away. "Because wanting something and having the right to keep it, they are not the same." Emily stared at him. "Caleb." He stood up suddenly and walked to the window. His breath fogged the glass as he spoke. "I told you the truth on the first night," he said quietly. "I get attached too fast. I care too deeply. I don't trust myself with people because I fear what I feel." Emily slowly placed her spoon down and stood beside him. "You didn't scare me," she said gently. Caleb shook his head. "Not yet, but I might. I've spent years alone. I don't know how to act when someone kind stays near me. I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." Emily touched his arm lightly. "You haven't made me uncomfortable, Caleb. You've made me feel safe." That surprised him. He looked at her with questioning eyes. As if unsure whether to believe her. Emily continued softly, "I haven't felt this peaceful in a long time." Caleb felt his chest tighten in a way he didn't understand. He took a slow breath, trying to calm himself. "You're kind," he said. "But the city is your world." Emily lowered her gaze. "Is it?" Caleb blinked, confused. "I came here to escape noise, worry, stress. My life hasn't felt like my own in a very long time, she admitted. The storm scared me, but these days with you, they didn't scare me at all. Caleb didn't respond. He didn't know how to. After a moment of silence, Emily stepped back. I don't want to rush any decision, but I want you to know I don't feel trapped here. I feel safe, peaceful, seen. Caleb's throat tightened. No one had said anything like that to him in years before he could speak. A deep rumbling sound echoed from far away, the distant noise of plows clearing the road. Both of them looked outside. The roads. Emily whispered. Caleb nodded slowly. They're clearing them. He didn't say anything more. Neither did she. The quiet between them grew heavier, not cold. Not angry, just full of unspoken thoughts. Emily walked to the small table and packed her camera into her bag. She moved very slowly, almost as if her hands didn't want to finish the task. Caleb watched her silently, his jaw tight. When she placed her coat on, Caleb cleared his throat. I'll walk you to the road, he said. She nodded softly. Together. They stepped outside, facing the bright, cold morning. They walked through the snow path Caleb had cleared earlier. Emily's boots sank deep, but Caleb moved confidently, helping her when the snow was too heavy. When they reached the edge of the mountain road, Emily stopped. A plow had already passed, leaving a narrow but usable path. She turned to Caleb. So, I guess this is goodbye, she said quietly. His eyes were steady but full of quiet pain. If you ever need a place to stay again, my cabin will always be open. Emily smiled softly. I know. Caleb's breath turned white in the cold air. He wanted to say something more, but he stopped himself. He didn't want to pressure her. Emily adjusted her bag strap, looked at the road, and back at him. You're a good man, Caleb, she said softly. Better than you realize. He looked down at the snow. I'm just a man who tries. That's enough, she whispered. She turned away and took 3 slow steps toward the road, but then she stopped. She stood there frozen for a moment. Then she turned back to him. Caleb, she said gently. He lifted his eyes. Emily walked back to him, stepping carefully through the snow, stopping just a foot away from him. I don't know what this feeling is, she admitted softly, but I know I don't want to leave without understanding it. Caleb's breath caught. Emily continued, If I return to the city today, it will only be my body returning. My mind will stay here, wondering. Caleb swallowed hard, unable to speak. So, she said slowly, I'm asking you, can I stay a little longer? Not forever. Just longer. To understand this peace. This place, and you. Caleb felt something warm rise in his chest, feeling he had buried for years. He looked into her eyes. You can stay, as long as you want. Emily exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. Together, they walked back toward the cabin, leaving new footprints on the snowy path. Inside, the fire was still warm. Caleb removed his coat and looked at her. Welcome back. Emily smiled, the first warm smile she had felt in months. It feels like I'm coming home. Caleb breathed slowly, letting peace settle inside him. For the first time in years, he didn't fear his emotions. He didn't fear his heart. He didn't fear himself, because she understood him, because she stayed outside. The mountains stood tall and silent, watching over the cabin that now held 2 hearts learning trust, peace, and a new beginning. And inside, Emily and Caleb shared a quiet moment to people from different worlds, finding comfort in one small cabin after a long storm, a beginning born not from fear, but from warmth.